This review was shot over 3 days on a drive between Chandigarh to Leh. So you're going to get various levels of energy, depending on various levels of oxygen, and perhaps a costume change or two through the duration of this review. But let me answer the first and probably the foremost question on your head first. If you're thinking of differentiating between the Nissan Tekton and the Renault Duster on the grounds of ride quality, handling, comfort, space, practicality, quality, tech, do not bother with it. They are, for all intents and purposes, the exact same car down to the tune of engine and suspension that they are running. But here's where they're different. First, the brand. If you'd like your car to be Japanese and say ramen instead of ratatouille and French, there you go. But the biggest difference of all remains in their design. If the Renault Duster is a G-Shock, the Tekton is a Casio edifice. A bit more urban, a bit more premium in its intent, and I think Nissan's done an excellent job of boiling down that baby Nissan Petrol vibe down to this car. It's a car with a much smaller footprint and a different platform, of course, than the Petrol itself. But the way they've got the essence of that big daddy SUV down to this is really impressive. And I love the kind of road presence that this car has. Then comes the side profile. Now you'd think that there wouldn't really be a core point of distinction between the two cars, but there is. Aside from that little detailing on the door, the T280 or alternative badging depending on what engine you choose, you're going to see on the fender. I love these 18-inch alloy wheels. I think I can term them as pre-modded because typically you'll find that a lot of cars want to go for modifications to get wheels that are a little bit more expressive than what you'd get from the factory. But these just work so well with the Tekton's design, and they don't feel under-tired or the wheel size doesn't feel like it's not appropriate for this. I don't see the need for 19-inch wheels on this car. 225/80, it doesn't just look good from the side profile, but even when you're following the Tekton, it looks size appropriate. At the rear end, the distinction isn't as significant, but they've made some small tweaks. One, you have this squared off finish for the outer edges of the taillights instead of that V that you get in the Duster, and you get a massive Tekton badge in case you're confused about what car this is, whereas in the Duster you'd have the Duster badging just immediately underneath the number plate. Still a handsome execution, if not the sharpest design differentiation versus its cousin. The boot space, about 700 liters measured all the way up to the roof, just north of 500 above the parcel tray, and in terms of actual usability speak, big suitcases, airport runs, weekend road trips, you've got all the space you could possibly need. This is easily among the most accommodating boots, not just on paper, but also in terms of how usable it actually ends up being. And yes, power tailgate. And now over to what you will love above all else, and that is in the driving experience. Much like the Renault Duster, the Nissan Tekton surely puts the driver in the center stage. And make no mistake, the Duster and the Tekton are set up identically right down to their suspension setup. So what are you getting in that whole equation? Number one, you are getting a ride package that has a little bit of a firm edge initially, something that you may feel more on broken roads or maybe not so well leveled concrete roads, but otherwise once you go over speed breakers, bad roads, unleveled roads, unpredictable curves, random dips, every single situation the suspension just feels so composed and importantly also very quiet. That also translates into a brilliant handling package because yes, the Tekton is a high-riding SUV, but the mannerisms, especially once you take these corners and curves that are leading up to roads like the ones that we have going up to Manali, it feels so sure-footed and just keeps urging you to push harder and harder. Anyway, now let's come to the engine options. You have two, both turbos, both petrols. The smaller one, 3-cylinder turbo, 1 liter, available only with this 6-speed manual transmission. As a matter of fact, this is the first time that I'm experiencing this particular powertrain. And then you have the 1.3 liter 4-cylinder turbo engine that is offered with both a DCT as well as a manual transmission. Let's talk about this engine first. Now, I didn't expect much from this engine and transmission combination. I honestly expected it to be something that's available to give the Tekton a more attractive starting price. But honestly, it is good for the kind of use case that it's meant for, and that is predominantly city driving, which does beg the question as to why Nissan, or Renault for that matter, didn't find it prudent to offer this particular engine with an automatic transmission. A CVT with something like this, especially with the kind of nature that this engine has, would have actually been a very good option. And I say this because, look, the manual transmission is actually quite easy to use. So clutch travel, not too long. Clutch weight, not too heavy. The gear gates, very well defined. The gear knob almost feels like something that you'd lift off a racing sim from an arcade. Very enjoyable to use, has this slightly rubbery touch. I'd say that it could have been a little bit lighter to shift, but otherwise in city conditions, absolutely sorted. But you'll have to get familiar with this gear knob because this engine makes you play with it quite a bit by virtue of how the turbo is set up. Its peak performance is sitting really between 2000 to about 3200 RPM. And if you go above that, it's just noise. If you stay below that, it's absolutely flatlining. So you have to work the gearbox a fair bit and keep it between these short ratios to exact the right amount of performance. It's not something that's going to be as much of an issue when you're driving through crawl traffic, when you're sticking to first or second gear only, because honestly, in any given manual transmission, that's where you'll be. But when you're in that middle point, in that point of 40 to 60 kilometers per hour traffic where it randomly picks up but then suddenly slows down, you will work your way up to third, come back down to first. Work your way up to third, come back down to first. So those transitions are something that you're going to have to be prepared for, and you will get familiar with this gear lever because it's something that you're going to be using quite often. It's not even like a situation where you have a super tall third gear where if you were to keep it in a slightly high gear and go for a nice little pickup, it's not going to build up that speed gradually. It will absolutely flatline, which means you have to give it a downshift. In fact, even when you're driving out on the highway, sitting at 100 kilometers per hour in 6th gear, the car asks you to downshift. It gave me that prompt on the instrument cluster, which was very weird. And I think it's one of those situations where you do become aware that the base of this transmission is actually a 5-speed. They've given you that 6th ratio to give you a little bit more ease once you're sitting at higher speeds. Also bear in mind that if you do have slightly larger feet, there's not a lot of space next to the clutch pedal for you to rest it. So you're going to be resting it slightly adjacent to the clutch pedal and behind it. And what else is there to this engine? I should mention, interestingly, the clutch's bite point is actually more predictable and easier to get used to than it is in the 1.3 liter turbo's manual transmission. Otherwise, NVH is very well controlled. It's not really getting noisy at any point. And again, because there's no real point to revving this engine particularly hard in any given scenario, you won't find that it gets super raspy or noisy. It does have a little bit of a 3-cylinder whine. And yes, at idle, especially at cold starts, vibrations will be apparent. But once you're on the move, not really something that's going to become an annoyance at all. Then we come to the 1.3 liter turbo available with DCT and manual transmission. I've only experienced it with an automatic in the Tekton. That's the only one they have on this particular drive. And I have to say that the difference between the two, the 1 and the 1.3, it's not just a matter of 300 cc's and 1 cylinder. There is a notable difference in the engine's character because the 1.3 is a lot more eager, a lot more exciting, has a much wider power spread and doesn't make you play within a shorter rev range, which means it's giving you a bit more go on the move at city traffic. You definitely have stronger mid-range performance, which means overtakes in any given scenario or driving uphill is going to be a lot easier. And there's also a lot more gusto at the top end, which means once you want to push it hard, the 1.3 has plenty to keep you excited for years and years that you're going to be running. And of course, it has the benefit of the DCT automatic transmission. Twin clutch automatic, very smooth, very responsive. It does come with the option of paddle shifters as well. The 6-speed DCT gets its gear selection right for most scenarios. Pull and hold the paddle shifter to get it into manual mode and it'll let you push the engine high up in the rev range before auto upshifting. I just wish the paddle shifters themselves offered more tactility in their action. Inside, the Tekton makes its loyalties to the driver very apparent. It's a very commanding driving position with a great view of a very muscly bonnet. The entire cockpit is sort of angled towards you and you feel very cocooned inside this cabin. Now, one difference, of course, is the choice of design that Nissan's gone for as opposed to Renault, which means you have a slight difference in the pattern that you'll have in the crash pad. It's a little bit more premium, and even the choice of color that they have in this top-end variant with this purple and white combination, which could have been actually a little bit polarizing. It's one of those infinity-derived colors, but it actually does work inside this cabin and fits in very organically, so I do like that. Quality-wise, I'd say that there are some inconsistencies. Like, I absolutely despise the choice of plastics that they have for this AC console, and even some elements that you'll find that are just a little bit scratchy on the dashboard. But otherwise, for the most part, I'd say 80-85% it's par for the course. Not really setting any benchmarks for the segment per se, but won't give you many major reasons to complain either. As for the cabin space, yes, if you are somebody as tall and even fat as me, 6'5", you'll find that you do have enough space in the floor box to let your legs stretch out. There is enough range in the seats travel itself, so you can get into a comfortable position. And I have been driving this car now and will be driving it for about 700 to 800 kilometers across 3 days, and I've not really found myself uncomfortable. What you will find is that the driving position is rather cozy. So especially in the automatic transmission variant, where it has this different central console, your knees will land up touching up against the center console, the left knee, and your right knee will land up resting on the door handle itself. I feel like an accessory option of something like a soft padding over here would honestly solve for that. And otherwise, if you're of an average height and an average build, this is going to feel plenty roomy. But again, bear in mind that this is not a space that feels like a very big car on the inside. You will be sitting a little bit intimately with your co-driver, and you're not going to have that same sense of space compared to some alternatives in the segment that do feel bigger in this respect. Features: 2 Type-C chargers up front and at the rear, along with a 12-volt charging socket here and a wireless phone charger as well. There's this sliding door with a little storage for bottles and a little separator in there as well. Dual zone climate control. You also have this touchscreen, which is Google based. It has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay connectable wirelessly if you need, but you can run Google Maps directly from the screen and have that display brought into your digital instrument cluster. The digital instrument cluster itself has different displays and different views that you can go through. Basic information about your driving information, ADAS settings that are displayed over here, though you have to control them from the touchscreen itself, what music is playing, etc, etc. So you have a great list of options, and functionally everything over here is sorted. But the one thing that I do not like, even though this car does have a surround view camera, the camera feed resolution nowhere near being up to the mark. Not only is the resolution not too good, but even the processing of the feed itself, it has this frame by frame nature that really hampers usability. I don't know why people don't just get this simple thing right. Other features include an auto dimming IRVM, front seat ventilation, a panoramic sunroof, one touch up down function for all 4 power windows, and rake and treat steering as well. The safety package is also thorough with up to 6 airbags, ABS with EBD, traction control, and a long list of advanced driver assistance systems as well. The backseat space, again decent, definitely acceptable for a family, but not setting any new benchmarks. Your view out from the backseat is a little bit hemmed in because of the tall dashboard as well as the front seats, and space is ideally suited to 4 people who are at most 5'8", 6 foot tall at a stretch, sitting one behind the other. Cars like the Tata Sierra and Kia Seltos are definitely miles ahead in this department. Let's summarize the Nissan Tekton then, and it should come as no surprise that I absolutely loved the Renault Duster, so there's no reason why I wouldn't love the Nissan Tekton either. This car delivers strong when it comes to road presence, great safety package, but the core driving factors, the real personality of this car comes from its ride, handling and performance package. But it is backed up by a great tech package to keep you entertained as well. What are you not really getting? Well, the core issue remains that this is a car for someone who's at least a little bit selfish. Somebody who is focused on the driving experience, the driver's seat, and everything else about it. Which means it's not going to give you that same buddy-gaddy experience, the best backseat experience, especially when you compare it to similarly priced and similarly sized rivals like the Kia Seltos, the Tata Sierra, or I'm pretty sure even the new Hyundai Creta that hasn't even launched yet. But otherwise, for what it does, the core purpose that it serves, the Tekton delivers and how. But more importantly, the Tekton has put me into a headspace that I haven't been in for a very long time. See, every time somebody would ask me about buying a Nissan car, I would have some hesitation. Not because of their products. I'm personally a very big fan of everything from the Nissan Magnite to the Nissan Kicks because these are fundamentally very sorted cars. But the problem for the longest time has remained Nissan's sketchy commitment to the Indian market. It's coming up with stopgap solutions, cars that were priced absurdly, coming in with launch plans that did not make any sense at all. And for the longest time, that was the case. But now, with their dealership expansion plans, with the intent that they've shown with the kind of product and segment that they're targeting with the Tekton, it finally feels like there is a roadmap that makes sense and one that we can get behind. And it's about damn time.